The egg is not the problem. The breakfast around it can be. One egg can be part of a healthy morning, but the way it is stored, cooked, seasoned, and paired with other foods can completely change what that breakfast becomes. Picture a typical morning in your kitchen. An egg gently firming up in a warm pan. But the real story? It's right there in the details around it. Notice that heavy pat of butter melting away, the generous pour of salt, and the side of highly processed breakfast meat. It's so easy to look at that plate and focus all of our nutritional anxiety right on the egg itself. But as an evidence-based nutrition specialist, I can tell you right now, we're actually looking at the wrong variable. So I want you to keep a really simple analogy in mind today. Think of an egg like a clean note in a recipe. What actually changes the song is absolutely everything added around it. The heat, the salt, the fat, how it's stored, the timing, and of course, the rest of the plate. Honestly, judging an egg in complete isolation is the ultimate breakfast mistake. It's definitely not about avoiding this incredible food, it's about understanding the specific context we prepare it in, especially if you're someone who eats eggs regularly and is paying attention to long-term wellness. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide between the ingredient and the execution. A simple 2-egg breakfast on its own, that is a fantastic, lean, protein-rich foundation for your day. But consider the cumulative plate. When we start adding a generous dollop of butter to the pan, maybe folding in a heavy handful of shredded cheese, and serving it alongside salty, processed meats, well, that exact same breakfast ends up carrying far more saturated fat and sodium than most mature adults should really be having in one sitting. And the tricky part, it doesn't taste excessive in the moment, which makes it incredibly easy to overlook. But eating eggs cooked this way, morning after morning, can quietly influence your cardiovascular system over time. Your heart doesn't need you to stop eating eggs. It literally just needs you to stop drowning them in fat. Now, for decades, so many of us grew up with the habit of just tossing out the yolk to cut down on dietary cholesterol, right? But doing that actually means throwing away exactly what our bodies need. The yolk is where nearly all of an egg's most vital nutrition lives. We're talking about choline, which your brain heavily relies on for memory and focus. We're looking at lutein and zeaxanthin, which are deeply tied to maintaining eye health. And the yolk is also one of the very few natural food sources of vitamin D, which, let's face it, becomes much harder for our bodies to synthesize from sunlight as we mature. Plus, the 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans actually removed that long-standing strict limit on dietary cholesterol because the science around how it affects our blood cholesterol was totally reconsidered. So, unless a healthcare professional has specifically told you otherwise, skipping the yolk is just depriving your body of the exact nutrients it needs the most. All right, let's shift our focus a bit, because nutrition is really only half of the story. The other half revolves around the physical mechanics of your meal. We need to completely reframe what some people might call deadly mistakes into what they actually are: totally manageable kitchen thresholds. We're talking about unrecognized kitchen mechanisms like heat, bacteria, and proper storage. Okay, let's dive into this sequence because it happens in almost every single kitchen without us even realizing it. Imagine you crack a couple of eggs for your morning omelet. Without even thinking, you quickly wipe your hands on a kitchen towel. Then you reach for the bread to toast, or worse, you reach for your pill organizer to take your daily medications. In that split second, you might have just transferred bacteria from the eggshell directly to something you're about to ingest. Even eggs that appear perfectly clean can carry bacteria on their shells. But the solution here takes just seconds. Simply crack the eggs, wash your hands immediately with warm soapy water, and always, always use a separate cutting board for raw ingredients. Now, this number represents a really simple professional culinary trick, the 20-minute rule. Taking eggs directly from a cold refrigerator and dropping them into boiling water often causes the shells to crack, just because of the sudden, extreme temperature change. But by simply letting your eggs sit at room temperature for about 20 minutes before boiling them, you completely prevent those cracked shells. Plus, you actually give the egg a much more even cook and a significantly better texture. It's just a tiny shift in timing, but it completely upgrades the result. And speaking of boiling eggs, here is a highly practical tip that is an absolute game changer, especially for anyone managing arthritis or reduced grip strength. Just add 1 tablespoon of white vinegar to your boiling water. If an egg does happen to crack during the cooking process, the acidity of the vinegar causes the egg white to coagulate almost instantly, which seals the crack and keeps everything safely contained inside. And as a fantastic bonus, eggs cooked this way are significantly easier to peel. The shell pulls away in much larger pieces rather than fracturing into those frustrating tiny little fragments that stubbornly cling to the egg white. Now here's a fascinating way to solve the mystery of the expiration date. You see, as we get older, our immune systems naturally become a bit less resilient, which means our margin for error with food safety gets smaller. If you're ever unsure if an egg is still safe to use, just use the float test. Place the egg in a bowl of cold water. If it sinks and lies flat on its side, you're good. It is fresh. But if it stands upright or floats to the top, it's older. This happens because the air pocket inside the eggshell naturally expands over time as moisture evaporates. It's just a really reliable visual way to check freshness and protect your wellness. 2 hours. This is the absolute maximum amount of time any cooked egg dish should sit out at room temperature. We overlook this all the time during family gatherings or holidays, right? A quiche, a frittata, or a bowl of egg salad gets left out on a buffet table while everyone is catching up. But after that 2-hour window, or honestly just 1 hour if the room is particularly warm, bacteria can multiply to unsafe levels. This is a crucial threshold to respect because as mature adults, our natural bodily defenses, like stomach acid, can often decrease, which makes us a bit more susceptible to foodborne illness. We've all seen it. Social media has completely popularized the visual of these beautiful, runny egg yolks and barely set whites. But what looks appealing on a screen isn't always the optimal choice for a mature digestive system. Food safety recommendations have evolved as our scientific understanding has improved over the years. What felt perfectly fine at age 30 just carries a different risk profile later in life. Both the egg white and the yolk need to reach a safe internal temperature to neutralize potentially harmful bacteria. And at that safe temperature, the yolk will actually be firm. Color just isn't a reliable indicator of safety anymore. So using a simple food thermometer is the best way to ensure your breakfast is fully set and completely safe. So that brings up a really crucial point. What happens to those cherished family traditions that actually require raw eggs? I'm talking about recipes like homemade holiday eggnog, classic Caesar dressing, or a delicate chocolate mousse. Raw eggs can carry salmonella inside the egg itself, not just on the shell. But here's the good news. You don't have to give up these recipes at all. The answer is pasteurized eggs. These are whole eggs that have been gently heated right in their shells, just enough to destroy harmful bacteria, but not nearly enough to actually cook the egg. They behave exactly like raw eggs in your mixing bowl, giving you the exact same texture and whipping ability, but entirely removing that unseen risk. So to bring this all together, the egg is definitely not the enemy. It remains an incredibly healthy, nutrient-dense option for mature adults. It supports your brain, your eyesight, and your energy levels. The big takeaway from this explainer is that you protect your wellness by managing the overall plate. It's about watching the amount of saturated fat, the sodium, the processed additions, and just respecting those simple, safe kitchen preparation thresholds we talked about. You are in complete control of the context. So I want to leave you with this question. How will you adjust the context of your next breakfast? Will you test your eggs for freshness, grab a separate cutting board, or maybe simply rethink the extra butter and cheese? Remember, while this explainer provides evidence-based context, you should always discuss any specific dietary adjustments with your qualified healthcare professional to tailor a plan that works perfectly for you. Keep learning, keep adjusting, and take control of your plate.